but it works in my favor sometimes because I can use it as a prop. So this morning, just pretend with me you're excited. It's Christmas morning. You're knocking stuff around. You're up, and the first thing you want to do is go down below the tree, and you want to pick up some presents. So we have some presents. We get excited for presents. Anybody want to open up a present? You get excited for presents. You have expectations of what your presents are going to be. Get really excited about it. And so what do? You want to tear into it, right? Do it. You get into it, and you tear it out, and you get all excited. You get all pumped. And you get socks. And you're like trying to find the right words to say to your mom. Thanks for the socks. They look warm. So you know the next one's going to be better because you just got socks. So you're really excited about it. So you have another present. You're like, yes! And you tear into it, you open it up, and you're like, underwear. You know me so well, Mom. Underwear. And they're clean. Thank you. I don't know about you, we spent a lot of time this weekend visiting Santa with our kids. And when Santa asked them what they want for Christmas, not once did I hear socks and underwear. Not once. There's something about gifts. Sometimes we get gifts that we need, not necessarily gifts that we want. There's going to be some times that we're going to get presents that definitely are needed. Socks and underwear are one of those things. You just need them sometimes. This is the Christmas story we're going to be talking about this year going into Christmas. The gift was something that we all desperately needed, but it wasn't everything that people wanted. And it wasn't done in the way that they wanted. So this morning I want us to just kind of think about this idea of the first Christmas and think of the idea of what had to happen for us to get the gift that we needed. In John 1:1, John states that in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word was with God. In the beginning was the Word, and it was God. He starts his view of who God is in this first Christmas different than all the other Gospels. He leaves out a huge portion and goes straight into the emphasis of God and his divinity through Christ. And Matthew and Luke give us a different perspective of that. He wanted us to know that in the beginning, before all of this, was the Word and it was God. And that was Christ. Okay? As we go into this story, there's going to be some uncomfortable parts of this Christmas story. There's going to be a view of this gift that was for all of us that's going to be a little different than we wanted. Some people they get really detached, thinking that God in no way can relate to us. And so one of the awkward moments of a Christmas story, because we think, you know what, there's just times in my life that God just doesn't get me. He didn't go through what I had to go through. He didn't do all these things. And we read this morning as our scripture reading in Hebrews 4:15. And it says, this is a different version. It says, Jesus understands every weakness of ours because he was tempted in every way that we are, but he didn't sin. There is something about this gift that we have to understand, that we have a God who would come and he would take on everything that the world would put in front of us, and he would know our struggles and go through all these things so that he can sympathize with our weaknesses and so that he can know us a little bit better. One of the uncomfortable parts of the Christmas story is having to understand that we do have a God who gets us because he put himself in our shoes. And this is a really difficult thing unless you've ever put yourself in somebody's shoes before to experience what they had to go through. We went to an event that we get to go to every year. It's called Singing Christmas Tree. They have a big group that supports special needs children, so we got to go and watch the show. And the pastor at the end, I don't know if you know Capital Christian Center, their pastor for a couple of weeks lived like a homeless man. So he walked around and did all these things. And he shared a little bit with us afterwards, and he said, this story makes so much more sense to me now because now for the first time I actually walked in somebody else's shoes. I had to struggle the way that they had to struggle. I had to be hungry like they had to be hungry. I had to find ways to get meals like they had to. I really, truly understood the pain that they were going through. Now I understand what it was like for God, through Christ, to come to this world and have to walk in our shoes. To know and to feel the same temptations, the same pain, the same struggle, the same issues that we were going to have to go through. Because he chose to come and to become fully man for us. And through that, he took on sin. And he conquered it. And he gave us an example. But not only did he choose to come to this world and to live like us, but he chose the lowliest of forms. From the time he was born to the way he died, Christ chose a humble entrance and a shameful exit so that we can have life eternal. He chose the birth of in a barn, amongst the animals, in a way that none of us would ever imagine a king to be born. The Christmas story is an example of humility. In Luke chapter 2, 16 through 20, it says this. So they hurried off, and they found Mary and Joseph and the baby who was lying in the manger. When they had seen him, they spread the word concerning what had been done and what had been told to them about this child. And all who heard it were amazed at what the shepherds said to them. But Mary treasured up all these things and pondered them in her heart. The shepherds returned, glorifying and praising God for all the things they had heard and seen, which were just as they were told. We have what we would expect to be this huge extravaganza, this royal celebration of a birth of a king, but instead we have shepherds coming and presenting themselves before God, the king. I don't know if you know this, but at that time, shepherds were the lowliest of positions. If you remember last Christmas, I got to dress up like a shepherd and kind of told the story through a shepherd's eyes. And believe it or not, just like kids don't ask for socks and underwear for Christmas, parents don't ask, I can't wait for my kid to grow up to be a shepherd. They just didn't do it. It wasn't something like, oh, Johnny's a doctor, that's great, my son's a shepherd. How do you like that? It wasn't the case. It was a glimpse of humility. But Luke tells us that this is the way it needed to be. They were excited to come in, to know, and to meet, and everything that was told about this king was true. And they told everybody and shared everything and celebrated. In Philippians chapter 2, 5 through 8, it says this. In your relationships with one another, have the same mindset as Christ Jesus, who, in being in very nature God, did not consider himself equality with God, something to be used to his own to his own advantage. Rather, he made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant, being made in human likeness, and being found in the appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient to death, even death on a cross. This Christmas story is a story of humility, from the beginning to the way he goes out, and then he encourages us to do the same. If we are truly going to allow the Christmas story to make sense for us, we have to take the same mindset of Christ, who, even though he could have used everything he had because he was God, that's what John tells us in the first chapter and first verse of his book, to his own advantage to make things easier for him, he didn't. Instead, he chose to be a servant. He chose to humble himself. He chose to be like us in human likeness. And he remained obedient even until death, even death on a cross. Of all the times where he could have said, this is the one time I'm ready to use what I know I can to get out of something, would have been a death on a cross. But he looks out, and he looks at all the people who are putting him on there, and he looks at his creation, and he looks at the joy that he sees in the tears of his mother, and he says, forgive them. While he's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he's asking God to let this cup pass from me, he knows, regardless of what I'm feeling right now, I want to do the Father's will, and I will remain obedient even in death, because I know where I'm going after. God gives us an example through his Son, this idea of humility. The Christmas story is the beginning of our salvation story. And we always like to go to the later part of the story and say, yes, he was hung on a tree. He was hung on a wooden cross, but we forget the fact that he was laid in a wooden manger. And this is the beginning of our salvation story, that God would choose to send his son to lay in a manger with farm animals, to give birth because nobody had room for him. And people are continuing not to have room for him and the end that is in within us. But he still comes humbly to serve and to follow his Father's will until death. And I want us to really hold on to this moment for this season and see how it sits with you. If you can carry this with you, that Christ had to be laid on a manger before he could be laid on a cross. That he chose you. He chose humility. He chose suffering. He chose embarrassment for you to have life and to have life eternal. And the last thing that I really want us to spend the rest of the time on is the Christmas story is a statement of love. We want to think that it's a story about his supremacy, the story about how God is all powerful, but instead he wanted to make a statement of love. And he chose to do this in Luke 2:7. It tells us this. While they were there, the time came for a baby to be born, and she gave birth to her firstborn, a son. She wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger because there was no room available for them. There was no guest room available for them. This is a story of love, and I want to just give you a picture real quick. Many of you, maybe like me, have seen a lot of nativity scenes, and they look so peaceful and cute. And you have God, Jesus sitting there in this really clean manger, like perfect. Their hair is all nice. Everything looks great. Mary had the big smile on her face, and she's standing looking at him like nothing went wrong that day. Everything was just perfect. Nobody puts the real view of a manger scene on their yard because it would be terrifying. It would be more like a Halloween story because, to be honest, see? Scary. But to be honest, it's what it would be like, because if you imagine, let's imagine it's raining, it's a difficult time, there's no room for them anywhere, and they get sent into a manger. The manger has farm animals and animals in it. It's dirty, it's not clean. They're having a child. If you've ever been in the room for your children to be born, it is loud. There's a thing going on, so you can say the animals were probably freaking out too. There was a lot going on, if you think about it. It wasn't the first choice for Joseph and Mary where they wanted to have their son. It was part of God's plan because it had to show this humility and this love for all of us that he would choose. This was the plan. It wasn't by accident that they ended up there. It wasn't by accident that they had to go and struggle through a lot of things in the beginning part of this Christmas story. It was to show that, yes, even in the struggle, God was going to be the gift, the Messiah. This was going to be our saving grace. And it was going to start in the most terrible circumstances. And it helps us to be reminded all the time that in all of that struggle, God's plan was still done and still carried out and still achieved. It wasn't set back because it didn't go to the plans that Mary and Joseph had. Because we had to be reminded most likely that God's ways aren't our ways, his thoughts aren't our thoughts. He's going to do things in our lives that aren't going to make sense to us. And we're going to get this gift. And he's going to give it to you whether you accept it or not. And that's the other part of Christmas that is an interesting thing. There's very few gifts that we don't accept, but we do choose. We do choose to open it. We do choose to receive it. We do choose to return it if we don't like it. And there were a lot of people who, when they saw that gift of a Savior, or what was told to them of this Messiah, they kept the receipt and decided to go back and turn it in and say, I don't want this. This wasn't part of what I saw as a true Christmas story. And they didn't accept it. And they looked at it like it was a gift of socks and underwear, knowing that they needed this gift, and it wasn't the way they wanted it, in the form that they wanted it as. And they choose to return it. I want us to really think about this vision of God and his love for us through this gift in all these unfortunate circumstances, but to see it more as a plan of how God chose to be just like you, to walk in all the same struggles that you're going to go through, to be humble, to serve, and to know that that was what God was going to call him to do. And from the beginning, he knew he was going to have to take up a cross for you. And it didn't slow him down from making that choice. That he chose to be us, to follow and to be a servant to God until he chose to take up the cross. And he did it so that we can have life. This Christmas, I hope that we can pay attention to the wrapping paper, especially what you wouldn't expect or how you would express it after you open it. And this may sound weird, but let's view this gift that we just unwrapped today. And I want you to smell the aroma. The stench of the animals, the look of the manger, the dirty, the noisy scene that was about to take place before us. And remember, knowing that he was going to be born into this circumstance, he still chose to do it for each of us. That he cares about us. That he cares about you in so many unexpected ways that you will never be able to imagine. And that a lot of times in this life that you're going to be living, you're going to be opening up a present that you may not understand, or that you may not have asked for, or you don't really want, but it may be something that you desperately need. And he's going to go further and further in our lives to show us this. But it all started with a birth. It all started with a choice of Joseph to keep his wife, or his girlfriend at the time, fiancée, to take the trip with her, to hold her hand through the birth of a son, and to raise a Messiah. Just so that she can watch him be laid down, only to be raised again by his real father. So that we too can have life eternal. This season is a season that we do get to see, what Dwayne said, a lot of people going out of the way to be difficult, but we also see a world that is ready to receive a message. And it may be the best time of our whole entire calendar year where people are ready to receive this message of a Savior, this message of a birth of a King, because they hear it, they're singing songs, they don't even know what it's about. And I want to impress upon us this morning that this is a moment where you're challenged to share your faith. Because where you may have been afraid before that people aren't willing to listen, I promise you that this is a time where they might. To share a story of a Christmas present that they might not want, but they desperately need. So I'm going to encourage you this morning to take that challenge. To take the challenge to know that you also are loved by God. Christ didn't come for only the people that he liked, only the people that were going to treat him well, but as he was on the cross, he was forgiving everybody who was putting the nails in the hands of his feet, that were stabbing him in the side with a spear, that were shoving a crown of thorns on top of his head, that were beating him. He forgave them. And he said, God, forgive them, they don't know what they do. But that goes to us, because if you don't know this, our sins are what put him on the cross. We weren't there, but we might as well have been. And this was because he looked at you. He said, you were worth me coming to be born in a barn for. That you were worth me dying for so that you could be with me forever. And that you are worth this ultimate gift. And I hope that you can receive it and live it. And so that's our challenge this morning. And as we carry on the series, I hope that you can keep this foundational point with us the rest of the time. God knows you. He knows your struggles. There is nothing that you are going through that he hasn't gone through. And guess what? He knows even deeper because he had to watch his son die for you who, some of us may never ever receive that message, but it was still worth it to do it. So I want us to hold that with us as we carry through this to understand how loved you are, how humble we should be in response to this message, and how even though there are some moments of this story that just seem so crazy for us to get, that it was all with the hope that we would be with him in eternity forever. Let's go to God in prayer. Dear Father, Lord, you're an awesome and amazing God. And we are so grateful that we get to be in your presence as a family together, lifting each other up as well, to know that you are a God who would sacrifice it all so that we can just have a chance to be with you. And it wasn't even a guaranteed thing that you would do it and we would all just be there. But you did it so that we can choose you and have this hope of forever. And have this hope of a life with no more pain, no more sorrow, no more backaches, no more emotional distress. All of the things that sin has put on us in this life will be lifted from us because of this gift of a baby born in a manger and a man laid on a cross. And God, I pray that if we have those who are struggling and need to see your provisions more in their lives, or they just need prayers because they've been struggling in sin, God, I pray that we can do that in a moment and pray for them. But more importantly, God, I'm praying for them now. That our hearts can be open and softened to receive your message, but also to let go of our past and to leave it at the feet of the cross and to look forward to that promise that you gave us of a life eternal. And we are so grateful for that gift. We pray this in your Son's name.